everyone. Welcome to the second interview in the IronWomen Best Performances of 2015 series. Today, I sit down with Australian Kate Bevilaqua, who joins us from her home in Perth. Kate was the first woman to win an Ultra Distance Triathlon outright. Hi Kate, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying a massive congratulations on your Ultraman race this year. I was personally so excited to see a woman win an Ultraman outright. That's really a good one for the girls, so congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It was better than I expected, obviously. I had some expectations going in, but I didn't think that I would be able to achieve that one. So it was a pleasant surprise at the end of the day.
Yeah, you made history.
I did make history, yeah.
So you say that was one of my first questions, is whether you sort of set that as a goal to kind of win outright on the day, or whether that was something that came about during the race.
I know there'd been a bit of a talk beforehand. I know the race director had done an article in the local newspaper saying that he had expected me to do well, that I could potentially top three. Maybe the win was there, but you never know. There were some quality males there that had great resumes over Ironman distance. But for me, it was an unknown. I had not done an Ultraman event before, so I didn't know how my body was going to respond or anything like that. It wasn't until halfway through the last day that I realised that I did have the chance to take the win overall, so then it was in the back of my mind. But going into it, it was more about focusing on myself and getting through it the best way that I could.
Right, and I think that's smart for Ultraman, right? So just tell us the distances first and the days, just so everyone's on the same page.
Sure. The first day was started with a swim actually. 10K swim was first.
Swim, yeah.
Yeah, 10K swim was first. And then I got off the bike and rode 150 Ks. And then day 2 was 276 Ks on the bike. And day 3 was a double marathon, so 84.4K run. So it was back to back, long course racing.
Yeah. Right. So when you say halfway through the run you realized it's sort of that you could win, that's still a marathon to go. Right?
It was actually. I was running alongside. You're on the run. You can have someone run with you, or they're not running in front of you. It's not really pacing you. They're just keeping you company.
Right.
And I had told my crew that I didn't want that until after the first marathon. It was going to be a treat after the first 42 Ks. Mm-hmm. So I did have Guy running alongside me, and the commentator, Steve, came up by in his car, and he said, I'm running in second at the time. The time difference between the first mile is holding steady. I'm putting time in the grip behind me. If I continue to do that, win overall. And he said, you would make history. And he drove away, and I think I was like at about 50 Ks in the run, and I turned to Guy and I just said, that's awesome, but I still have like 34 Ks to go. I can't even think about that right now because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 34 Ks. So I didn't. I just had to stick to my plan, and whatever would happen would happen.
Right. So just taking it back a step, you had 3 Ironman wins under your belt, right, in your career.
Yes.
What kind of made you say, okay, now I want to take on Ultraman?
A lot of people seem to think it was just a decision I made recently, like before the event, but I had wanted to do one for probably a good 5 years. I had been always bringing it up with Guy. Every year the Ultraman World Champs was on, I was like, I want to do one year. I want to do one. I do like the more long, slow and steady. Ironman's getting faster and faster now. And at the end of last year, I made the decision that I wasn't going to chase Kona points in 2015, and which meant that I could. I was like, well, that's it. Like, I'm doing Ultraman. Like, I've been putting it off for so long that, I've got to do it because it's something I want to do. And I'd always had my eye on Canada because I do have a soft spot. I think Canada's a beautiful country. I spent a year in Vancouver on a teacher exchange, and I'd been to Penticton a number of times before. So it was always going to be there. So that was it. I put in my application like everyone else and waited to hear back.
Yeah, Penticton is an amazing place. And I bet they're glad that you chose their race now after what happened, right? They got a lot of PR out of that.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hope it just promotes, in particular, more women to get involved in it. because anyone can do it. You really just have to put in some work to do it. But in particular, I feel like we want more women to be involved in it. We're better at the endurance sports. The longer events goes, the more and more women are closer and closer to the men. So until you get out there and try it. So hopefully I can convince more to go and do it.
Yeah. I think you've probably helped. So then, right. So do you think that you'll do another one? I mean, how long do you take to recover from this? I know you did another Ironman after that in Malaysia, right?
I did, yeah.
Now?
It was interesting. I raced like a week later after the event. I did an Olympic distance and I was like, oh, yay, I don't feel great. But it actually hit me shortly after. And I had spoken to Hilary Biscay, like world champion over the Ultraman distance event. And she was like, yeah, it took me, 6-9 months to a year to really recover from it. And I'm thinking it's not going to take me that long. But I probably didn't give it the full respect to get over it like I should have. Just as a professional athlete, I know that there are people that back them up and do them 3-4 months later. But I put a lot into that day, and I did need it physically and mentally. I noticed it probably took a fair amount of time. I was good for Malaysia, which was, over 3 months later. Like I was good to get through it, but just not have that top level of speed and intensity now that's required for that type of racing. I needed more time. So hence after Malaysia, I knew that I was thinking of racing again, but decided to listen to my body and give it a break.
Time to take a break. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you made that transition from Ironman racing to focusing on the Ultraman, what were the main things that changed in your training?
It was definitely, so I didn't really do any intensity. It's just a lot of volume. And by intensity, I mean sort of top end. There was still, anytime I go riding with Guy, it's not aerobic for me.
Yeah.
But it's just really the volume and the back-to-back days of volume, in particular long rides. But I still didn't go over, for a normal Ironman week, I may train 20 to 25 hours and have a big week of 30. Like for Ultraman, my biggest week was 35. Like it wasn't excessive. I feel like you can only do so much before you dig yourself into a hole. You have to find that balance.
Right. Yeah, I think, I've seen a couple of people train for Ultraman. They seem to, like you say, clump everything together in a couple days and then have a couple super easy recovery days. So it's like the volume is similar, like you say, but everything's sort of dumped into these 10-hour days.
Exactly, and that's the best way to do it because that's how the race is. It's 3 days of volume. So every week I would do like a big Friday, Saturday, Sunday to replicate race time, and then recover a few days from it. And each week that sort of just increased a little bit. And that I think worked great. You just had to get used to having tired legs and doing it on tired legs.
Yeah, I mean, what did you do to keep yourself mentally engaged? Even having done, myself having done a number of Ironmans, it's still kind of hard for me to imagine these huge bike rides, because already a 5-hour ride, to me, I have to put a lot of work into, staying focused. So what were some of the tricks that you used for that?
That's true. I think in the beginning I was a bit scared because I literally only June, July, I did 2 months. I did 2 months build to Ultraman, but I did an Ironman just before I started my build. Like I did an Ironman, had a week's break, and then started training for Ultraman. So I think I was originally thinking that's not long enough. I'm not going to be ready to do this event in 2 months' time. But I did have a big base, and so I hadn't thought about it prior to then. So then I wasn't thinking about it for 4-6 months and training towards it. I was able to had other things along the way. I think that helped. But and plus I was really, really motivated to do it. When I really wanted to do well at it. It's something I wanted to do. But the long ride days were definitely when you go out for 7-8 hour, plus hours. You don't even want to start. Like you wake up in the morning, you think, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But definitely breaking it up. Like I would go out and do 2 or 3 hours on my own, come back, meet Guy, ride, 3 or 4 hours with him, come back and then go back and finish it off on my own. And then just little treats, as bad as they sound, but you can still do them in the Ultraman. Oh, if I ride for 3 hours, I'll have a Mars bar. Then in 2 hours, I'll have this.
Right, the usual kind of tricks, right?
Yeah. Anything sticks to it. So, yeah. I was using them all.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And one last thing I wanted to ask you about was, you ended up doing this really special performance. What do you think are the key factors that led to that? I mean, in terms of even your support system or your training, or how did the magic happen?
I mean, it's a combination of all those things. Obviously, getting through the training is the first part, and although the event itself is tough, like the 3 days is tough, I think the training leading up to it is harder because you're doing it for longer. You're doing it for 2-3 months consecutive, and that takes a toll on you and your family and your support system. So that was definitely a factor. But I had a great support crew. Like my coach, Guy, was there. So I had, the coaching part side of it, the emotional side of it with Guy. My physio from Perth and Mazzy, like 2 best friends from Perth, came over. So they were my crew in the car. And so they all knew me extremely well. And if you'd seen me actually at the end of day 2, I didn't even know if I was going to be capable of starting the run on day 3. I had actually really hit the wall and was emotionally just thought I had made the worst decision to do this event, and maybe it wasn't going to be as great as I thought. But I had Marion was calculating the calories I was burning throughout the day, riding or swimming or running, everything. She was calculating what I was eating, and at the end of the day, we were trying to at least get that balanced. So day 1, I didn't do that, and so I suffered on day 2. And I have a friend in Boise who just over a year ago she was training for Kona and got hit by a car, so she still is unable to walk. Like, she's had issues with her back. She's always wanted to do Ultraman, and I remember waking up in the morning of day 3 and thinking, I can go out and do this. Like, I can go out and run. If I can't do it for me, I got to do. I can do it for someone else. And that just was something that I carried with me the entire time on the run. So there's so many things that came to play that, that made the day and the 3 days what they were.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that, it sounds very similar to Ironman in terms of having high points and low points during the day. Was that low dark point is sort of after day 2? Was it lower than Ironman, or was it similar?
That's a good question. There were more dark points, but that's because it does go over 3 days, and they were all on day 2. Like, I didn't day 3. I had a few, but not as many, and they weren't as deep and dark as day 2. Right. I think they're similar. Like, I went to Ironman Malaysia and thought, this is one day. Like, I'm going to be able to get off the bike and it'll be fine. But it was not. Yeah. It's very different. It's just such different racing. So you experience the same sort of things, just in the Ultraman events. It's over a few consecutive days.
Right. And it's interesting too that you mentioned nutrition right away with that. I think that's so true for Ironman too, that often our dark times we think we're struggling mentally, but really we just need a Coke. Yeah.
That's right.
It's such an interesting phenomenon, just to not buy into your own mindset. Just, something else might be going wrong. And typically it has to do with food or salt or hydration, right?
Yeah. So I think when I was at like 200 Ks into the bike, my crew could tell I was in this patch. They actually pulled me off the road and said, this is something you can do in this type of event. And they sat me down and like one of them was reloading my bike with nutrition because it was hot, so cold nutrition. And that's what they did. They gave me a Red Bull and said, look, you only got 70 Ks to go. And I'm like, only 70 Ks to go. They reminded me, this is what you want to do. You're here, you're doing it. But giving me the caffeine and refueling me with food and things like that, just to give you that little bit of a pick up to keep you going. Mind you, we had to do it again, like 30 Ks, 35 Ks later, but whatever works.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. An hour later, you need something else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, Kate, again, I just want to say massive congratulations. I think you've done womankind a huge favor. So thank you for being on the show, and congrats again.
No, thank you. Hopefully I can see more women out there doing it over the next few years.
Big thank you to Kate for sharing her success with all of us. Join me for the next installment of the Great Performances series, in which I talk to Coach Marilyn Chakota about what makes and breaks great performances. Until then, follow WiSP on Twitter @WiSP Sports and on our WiSP Sports Facebook page. Join me, Sara Gross, here for the next installment of Iron Women.